Okay, so yes, I'm Martin Bright. I'm the political editor of the Jewish Chronicle, but I also run a small charity called New Deal of the Mind, which aims to get young people back to work in the creative industries. We have quite a kind of simple way of doing that, which is that we pay them. We've found that this is quite a good way of getting a diversity of into the labour force. You pay people you can choose from right across the whole wide spectrum of British society. And this has meant that within the 8 to 9 months that we've been operating, we've created 800 jobs across the country within cultural institutions. Of those people who are on 6 months placements, 70% of them have gone on to find full-time work or go back into higher education, and 60% of the group come from ethnic minority backgrounds. So we're quite keen on the idea of paying people for their labour. We're here to talk about interns. In fact, some of us in this room have been talking about interns pretty much all day. It seems to be intern day. I have to apologise for the late start today. It's entirely my fault because I was at the launch of Hazel Blear's parliamentary paid internship scheme that she's managed to launch in the House of Commons, and extraordinary turnout. Some of the most prominent MPs and journalists there talked for a short while to David Davis, who explained that he was 100% behind Hazel Blear's scheme, but kind of had to understand that in the present climate and with the present pressures around MPs' payment, of course, he had certain people working in his office who'd been there for months, some nearly a year, unpaid. This is the culture that we're battling against. Finally, as a sort of matter of introduction, as I was leaving my office today, heard the extraordinary news that Jemima Khan had been appointed as the associate editor of The Independent. Probably the most depressing piece of news as a journalist I've heard in a long time. What kind of message The Independent, supposedly a liberal newspaper, is sending out to young journalists trying to struggle into that profession now, I really don't know. And I have to say, appalled. The Independent is already one of the worst employers on Fleet Street, so if the message they're sending out is either you work for free or just be really rich in the first place to get into journalism, then that is really, really depressing. To our panel, which is the most important thing tonight, we have an extremely eminent panel, and some of the kind of experts in the field really on interns. To my left, my immediate left, is Fiona O'Clery, who is herself a freelance journalist and vice chair of the London freelance branch of the NUJ, has been involved in fact set up the NUJ's Cashback for Interns campaign, which I'm sure she'll say some more about, but is actually an extraordinary moment in the history of interns. They have managed to, with one particular intern, get the money back from her internship at national minimum wage rate. I already know from my own experience within the cultural sector that this has put the fear of God into people. Across the cultural sector, people are saying, have you heard what's happened with the NUJ? We're going to have to start paying people. It's really scary. That's good. Immediately to her left is Dupsy Abiola, founder and CEO of Intern Avenue, from Oxford herself, former barrister, and she is an employer of interns. I'm sure she'll explain exactly on what basis she does that later. Andrew Scherer, to her left, is marketing manager of the internship agency Inspiring Interns, and I think we're going to challenge him about the place that he sees for interns too. Immediately to his left is probably the most famous intern in the world, Ross Perlin. He's the author of Intern Nation, How to Earn Nothing and Learn Little, I'm very much looking forward to hearing what he has to say. And to his left is Dom Potter, the co-founder of Internocracy, one of the kind of best of the intern kind of lobbying organisations that's operating today. So without further ado, I think I'll pass on to the intern experts, and perhaps we should just simply move in that order across the panel, if that's okay.
Okay, so the Cashback for Interns campaign is an NUJ initiative. It's set up because unions really, the efforts of unions brought about a lot of the employment protections of the 20th century, so we're not really too keen on sitting back and watching them being eroded in the 21st century. One thing that a union can do is act in a systemic way. So rather than work purely on activism, which unions also do, we're dealing with the legalities of the unpaid internship situation, around which there is a lot of vagueness, not necessarily in the law, but more in the understanding of it. We've invited interns to come forward, and we will fight the national minimum wage claims for them. We've had one good result so far. We've only had one claim, by the way, go through the courts, so we've had 100% success rate. And the reasons for this are twofold. Firstly, we obviously want to get some money back for individual interns, but the idea is not for every person who's done an unpaid internship to come to, in media, to come to the NUJ. We couldn't do that. It's really to educate people. In the past year, I've realised that one of the biggest problems is ignorance. And many employers don't know the law, and there have been studies on this, bizarre figures like 87% of employers don't know. But also many interns, prospective interns, don't know. And I think, personally, I'm coming to the conclusion that a lot of the problem starts in universities or before. People are encouraged to believe they should be doing unpaid internships. And I think part of the problem for that is that there are too many courses. They can't send everyone out to employment, so maybe they could do an internship. It makes the universities feel better, but we should be looking at why there are so many people coming onto the job market in the first place. Now, the NUJ has around 30,000 people in the membership. According to Skillset, the 2009 figures, around 30,000 people did media studies degrees. 9,970 did a journalism degree. Now that's nearly a third of the membership of the NUJ coming in again every year, and it's just not sustainable. So yes, we need to take the national minimum wage claims through the courts. We need to fire that shot across the bows of employers. We need to educate employers. We also need to educate interns and everyone generally. And I'm hoping that Dupsy and her initiative will be able to do that.
Hi, that's a great lead-in. I am the founder and CEO of a brand new tech startup, I suppose. And what we do is we're sort of like a cross between LinkedIn and Match.com for interns, but we do it in a very socially responsible way. What we do is we allow students and graduates to create detailed profiles online, which are always there. We take all of their preferences, and we allow employers a very fast and easy way to get access to the interns with the skills that they need. And built in within our system is we only offer paid internships, and that's for the protection of both users, both the employers, because we've already heard of the risks either being dragged through the courts or through the press, as many of you guys have been highlighting, where interns haven't been treated right. But more importantly, there are several employers who want to pay their interns because they believe that an internship is about creating something that all companies crave, and that's the best possible talent, nurturing that talent, getting them in early, and being able to train them in a way that allows both the employer and the intern to have comfort that they're both in the right space. So internships, I think, have in the press been warped into something else, and lots of employers that I speak to are very excited about this process, because what we uniquely allowing people to do is create an online space where you can find each other very, very quickly. And so we de-risk it for employers because we don't allow unpaid internships, and we're objective. So we're trying to have social mobility, more diversity. So it's not just going out to the golf club and getting whoever you can get. It's about getting the people with the skills that you want. And I created this system with my little sister in in mind, because she graduated from UCL last year, and she had a real difficulty, and her friends had a real difficulty finding internships which were rewarding. And so I'm trying to get a win-win for everybody. And we've had a lot of great successes already. We launched on the 1st of May. The NUS are delighted with us and are supporting us wholeheartedly. And we hope that the media and everybody else will do the same. It doesn't have to be about exploitation. It can be about opportunity.
Great. I think we can clap our panelists. Kind of helps them relax.
Hello, my name is Andrew Shearer. I'm marketing manager for Inspiring Interns. I'm probably coming at this from a slightly different angle from everyone else. We do offer internships which are expenses only. They're time limited, they're 3 months long at most. And we've been running for about 2.5 years now. We've placed around 900 people in that time since starting as a sort of a 3-man team. We've grown up, we've got an office of about 15 now. And of the 900 people we've placed, around 65% have gone on to get full-time jobs within the organisation they've been working at. Of the remainder, around half of those at least have gone on to get full-time jobs elsewhere as a result of the extra experience they've got. I think there is a place potentially for internships which are time limited but possibly only expenses only. I think there's a danger if you start applying national minimum wage to every single opportunity that opportunities will start drying up for graduates, particularly in the current market. And I think the debate we need to be having isn't necessarily about whether to pay or not to pay. It should be about the overall quality of internships, whether they are beneficial for the graduate and to an extent also for the employer. Pay obviously is one part of that, but it needs to be more of a question of the overall quality of internships.
We can clap him anyway.
Every year, millions of interns labor in offices across the world, approximately 1/3 to half of them unpaid. Several 100,000 interns here in the UK, likely, as best we can guess. They usually work, the unpaid ones, without standard workplace protections or benefits. They save unscrupulous employers globally billions of pounds each year in labor costs. They displace or replace untold numbers of full-time regular workers. And interns are usually workers doing real work, powering their companies, powering their firms in vital ways, not just making Xeroxes and making coffee, which is sort of the stereotype, but often doing very substantive work. Thousands of these unpaid situations just in the UK alone are patently illegal, a massive labor violation hidden in plain sight. And yet nobody seems to do anything, at least until recently. Nobody seems to notice. The culture of unpaid work has become normalized. It's something we simply see as standard procedure. Companies large and small in all different kinds of white-collar industries do this and don't think twice about it. They don't even know that they're breaking the law. Young people see it as a rite of passage, something that they simply have to do. It's an experience that a whole generation of people is facing, we're going through. So the question is, how did we get here? What is this about? What is the larger meaning of this phenomenon, and what can we do about it? The book that I've written, Intern Nation, is the first detailed attempt to kind of look at this question, the first in-depth analysis of the internship phenomenon, where it came from, which sadly is my home country, the US, where internships have been fairly prevalent for the last 30 or 40 years. They emerged from the late 19th century practice in the medical profession of transitioning young doctors, people who just graduated from medical school, into their sort of full-time profession as a doctor. It was sort of a 2-year period where you did the dirty work of medicine, applying leeches, cleaning up spills, this sort of thing, things that the regular doctors didn't want to do. And over time, really beginning in earnest after the Second World War, the practice spread from medicine into other white-collar fields, into politics, into corporate America. But even at that time, there was essentially an expectation that you would be paid and that you would be hired at the end. The standard kind of old-fashioned corporate internship was a talent pipeline where companies judged the success of the program based on how many they hired at the end. So of a given intern class, companies at that period would hire 50, 60, 70, 80% of them. Interns were not being used as a kind of flex time, cheap labor talent pool. And that's what we've come to in the internship boom, as I call it, which has really taken off, especially in the last couple of decades, and is now coming to Britain in a huge way, as you all know, and swamping the British tradition of work experience, which, as far as I can tell, was a much more humane practice. It still is. Brief in duration, something that many people could do, in many ways more like job shadowing, watching to see how an office worked and understand what the nature of the nature of the firm was, the nature of that career. Whereas now what we're seeing is a whole range of excesses, which, again, have all started in America and are now coming to Britain, it seems, more and more. Internships lasting longer and longer, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. I just heard a case of an 11-month unpaid internship at the BBC. Some of these things stretching towards a year. The rise of serial interns. It's not enough just to do one of these things, because there's no full-time job waiting for you at the end of it. You have to do 3, 4, 5, 6 internships. In the States, I interviewed numerous people who'd done 8 or 9 internships. It's not considered abnormal. The involvement increasingly of schools. The new College of the Humanities, which has just arisen in our midst, is trumpeting its ability to find internship placements for its students. And perhaps we'll even think to charge for the practice, as many schools in the States do, essentially selling academic credit, tuition credits, for people to do internships. The rise of companies, for-profit companies which sell internship placements, and the rise of auctions, as we saw most drastically earlier this year when the Tories at a fundraiser auctioned off for several £1,000s a pop internships at firms that their big Tory donors are managers of or the bosses of. So all of this is happening, and it's only going to get worse if Britain continues down this sort of American path. I think the time to kind of nip this culture of unpaid work in the bud is now. And I just want to kind of highlight a couple of other sort of larger trends of interest that the internship boom is a kind of keyhole onto, a sort of window onto. One of them is the nature of what should be free and what should be paid for. People like myself, I'm 28. Many of us got our music collections for free. Many of us are used to online services being free. We're used to Google, Facebook, and things like that all being sort of without charge. Digital culture and online work, so much of it has been done without any payment that has contributed to this sense that we should also offer up our labor for free. We don't know what the value of a pound is. We don't know what to pay for anymore and what should be free. Another larger trend is the rise of all kinds of contingent and precarious forms of work, of which internships are only one. We should remember freelancers, temps, independent contractors, permalancers is another neologism which has come in. At this point in the UK, in the US, and across the developed world, something like 1/3 of all workers are in these kinds of precarious or contingent forms of employment. Another larger trend, or another sort of tie-in to larger issues, is this question of who should be investing in young people. Is this something which is a national or social responsibility, as used to be the case? The reason that school fees were low or non-existent in the past in the UK and also in the US was that it was considered a social investment by the country, by the nation, by the society in its young people to develop them for the good of the greater good. Increasingly, the rhetoric, and this has been happening for a long time in the US, but the rhetoric is that you have to invest in yourself. Nobody is going to invest in you. Your parents have to invest in you. You have to go deeper into debt. And you should want to do that because you have no other choice. So these are some of the ways in which the idea of working for free has become kind of normalized and naturalized. And the bigger issues, I think, have been touched on here, and I'm sure we'll get into as we get into a discussion. But the bigger issues have to do with social mobility. Has to do with the effect on a generation which has delayed the transition into adulthood, which has prolonged its adolescence, drifting from one unpaid gig to another, seeking out that full-time, regular, steady, stable job, which can be a sort of basis for building a family, moving into your own flat, beginning life as a kind of stakeholder, as a citizen, and not just being worried about where the next project is going to come from, how you're going to sort of get through the next couple of months. The larger issue is the complexion of the professions that most deeply influence our society, that stand at the commanding heights of the economy. Politics, media, the arts, publishing, these fields which are so influential and really sort of shape the public discussion. These are precisely the fields where unpaid internships have risen up. Glamorous fields, rock star jobs, areas where there is a lot of demand to break in, where there's overproduction of degrees, as Fiona said. And so the complexion of those professions is changing in a dark and sinister way. In 20 or 30 years, these professions will be dominated by ex-interns. Increasingly, they already are. And who are those interns going to be? They're going to be the people largely who were able to afford to work unpaid for significant periods of time. Not necessarily rich kids, but those who at least were able to make a sacrifice, who at least had some amount of a support network. Whereas those who couldn't pay to play in this kind of system will simply be left behind. So I look forward to the discussion, and I think even just bringing people together here and having a panel like this is an amazing first step, and I hope that things will kind of move forward.
Thank you. I'm Don Potter. I co-founded an organisation, a non-profit social enterprise called Internocracy, with my colleague Becky a couple of years ago, when we started out lobbying and partly stalking the panel on fair access to professions. They weren't too sure about including an internships chapter, which we thought was quite remiss of them. So we started out kind of quite focused on the advocacy work, but what we do at Internocracy is kind of blossomed from our own experiences of being unpaid interns. Our tagline is we raise the bar and we lower the barriers. So everything we try and do is linked to those two core aspects. So we accredit the very best quality internship programs that there are out there. We've currently got about 15 organisations. Next year we'll have about 50 accredited under our scheme, ranging from huge organisations like KPMG all the way down to small charities who still find the resource and the time and the commitment to be able to pay their interns. So we do a lot of work with employers, and we probably sit at the kind of the carrot side of the carrot and stick end of the internships debate, whereas there's a real role for people like Fiona at the NUJ, and actually pushing through this kind of cashback for interns is a real positive step. And creating disincentives, I think, for employers to employ people unpaid, I think, is a real positive step. I think from our perspective, it's a touch point issue, because we see internships as sitting right between kind of formal education and employment, and actually helping that transition. At the very best, they can be a real lever for social mobility in this country, and a real lever towards opportunity and aspiration for young people, often from quite disadvantaged backgrounds. But what's happening is that this ideal and this potential isn't quite being fulfilled at the moment. So we try, and everything that we do is kind of pointed towards trying to make sure that internships is a term which, Martin, you said earlier today, it's almost like wishing that we could get rid of the term internships. I wish it was that simple to a certain extent. I think it's going to be here for a while. It's not going to go away. So how can we utilise it for what we all see as positive in it? So I think there are some interesting discussions to be had, and I think building on Ross's points about the fact that internships are actually one part of a series of much wider debates, I think is quite an important one. And at Parliament earlier today, there was discussion from Hazel Blears and Stella Creasy in particular, two MPs who are really leading the way on this issue, saying that if they can't get it right in the Houses of Parliament, then what kind of chance has the rest of the country got? And I think in particular for us, looking at something like SMEs, there's a real potential, and through Martin's work on the Future Jobs Fund, that was kind of the definition of a win-win situation, whereby small, medium-sized enterprises got a real pair of hands and some extra resources when they needed it, and young people from disadvantaged backgrounds got a real chance to experience the world of work for 6 months. And I think the retention rate on that is actually what we need to kind of cling on to, because that's the potential in internships, which is that you can actually create these pathways into permanent employment and economic independence for people from all walks of life, just by getting the right systems and the right processes in place. So all the work that we do is around quality internships, all the work we do is around fair internships and fair recruitment practices. And I think the more people and organisations that kind of rally around this topic, and the more people that take an interest in this topic actually is going to be really crucial. You know, we did some research with YouGov, which came out about a month ago, which said that only 10% of young people between the age of 16 to 25 realised that an internship was subject to national minimum wage legislation. Only 12% of senior managers across organisations from every sector realised that internships were subject to national minimum wage legislation. So there's a piece around making sure that people really understand what we have in this country, and we're lucky enough to have a National Minimum Wage Act, in my opinion. So we need to get out there and we need to start talking about this in a much clearer and succinct way, I think. Otherwise, we risk it becoming, as Ross said, if we don't nip this in the bud, actually we risk this becoming a worse and worse problem. You know, and you see Parliament now. How diverse is Parliament? Not particularly, to be quite honest. You know, and I think that's a real issue. And it's almost like I was thinking in the way over when I was static on the bus. It's a little bit like driving at 80 on the motorway at the moment. You know, it should be 70, but it's kind of accepted practice to go at 80 on the motorway because that's what everyone else is doing. And it's kind of a little bit like that with interns. If you want your business or your company to go a little bit faster, just chuck in a couple of unpaid interns and you can reach your destination quicker. I think I'll end.
I'm going to throw the discussion open pretty much immediately, but just very quickly, I just wanted to ask people. We're in a position now where people are very confused about what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, despite the fact that, in fact, a lot of this practice is quite, frankly, illegal. It's amazing how many of our lawmakers in Parliament are prepared to operate illegal practices within their own offices. Okay, I'm being very generous here. But we do have huge differences in perception here. So, for instance, Philip Hammond, the richest man in the cabinet, Transport Secretary, is prepared to go on the record as saying that he believes that it would be a waste of public money to pay for something that he can get for free. It's one way of looking at it. It's the kind of ultra-market approach, and in a sense, he's kind of, there's a kind of sense in that. There are a lot of companies out there who build their business models on free labour, and they ask, with that kind of ultra-free market hat on, why they should be expected to pay for something that they can get for free on the open market. So that's one extreme. I was kind of tweeting about this today, and people were challenging me about where I drew the line personally. What do I think is acceptable in terms of work experience, using the argument of these being opportunities and the kind of access arguments that Andrew was using. And I said, well, I think probably a half day is probably just about, a half day of work experience, or perhaps a day, is just about acceptable. I then thought, well, someone might challenge me on the practices of the Jewish Chronicle when I came here. So I rang the editor and said, I only work there 2 days a week, so I haven't asked this question before. What are our work experience internship practices? And he said, well, we have 3-week internships where we pay expenses only, and during that period, if people get something in the paper, they get paid for that. And at the end of the 3 weeks, if they work longer than the 3 weeks, then they get paid a day rate after that, which seems to be a compromise and better practice than a lot of places.
NUJ,
okay, thank you very much.
Work experience guidelines.
Well, indeed. As I say, personally, I'm extremely tough on this. I think it's pretty much unacceptable for people not to be paid for their labour, and people should realise that if they are working for free, they are effectively paying to work. What I was going to quickly ask the panel then was, where do you draw the line? We've heard from Andrew where he draws the line. He thinks that 3 months of free labour is reasonable, and that is, I would say, becoming the consensus, and actually thought of as reasonable. So could we just one by one say what we think is reasonable as a period of free labour?
Well, speaking for the NUJ, I have to go with these, which says work placement should be for a minimum of 2 weeks. In exceptional circumstances, when the student's moving between a number of placements, 1 week may be sufficient. Unpaid work placement should normally be for no more than 4 weeks, and that, by the way, would be within an educational context. And paid work experience may be for 6 weeks or longer if part of a sandwich course. Personally, do you want my personal opinion?
Yeah.
I'd say none at all. But
Right. Okay.
Well, certainly on my website, there is none. I mean, we don't have unpaid work experience, and we don't have expenses-only work experience. What we're about is connecting people who are most likely to help one another, and we believe that the very, very bright student and graduate talent that are coming into these firms are worth the money. I think coming from a barrister's background, although I am no longer, sadly, or actually joyously, perhaps. Coming from a barrister's background, I think there's a distinction in work experience and internships or work shadowing, and I think this is something that I often explain to employers. There is a very big difference between work shadowing, where you're standing behind someone and taking a note for your own personal, understanding of how something works, and when you're providing something of value for which you would have to pay someone. Yes. And I think sometimes I've been delighted by the response from employers who have all said that for great interns, for great talent, they'd pay minimum national minimum wage. They pay way more than national minimum wage because they understand that getting someone in early saves them massive recruitment costs later. I mean, it's a business decision, pure and simple, and that's why I created my system the way I have. But quite aside from any of that, I think that when you have someone who's working, and when you're an employer, you have responsibilities. We have health and safety legislations. It's not acceptable for someone to have someone hanging off a roof and say, well, we've got a risky job for you. Do you want to do it? If you fall off the roof, I'm not responsible. You have to, as an employer, you have your obligations, and that's why, for even the benefit of the employers and to protect both parties, we encourage good practice because it's better for both, and that's what we're about. So I guess,
Can I just clarify on something?
Yep.
I'm against unpaid internships. There should be no unpaid work experience.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
Okay, just to quickly pick up on something you were saying there. I don't think good practice has to be divorced or doesn't have to come hand in hand with paying national minimum wage. I think you can retain good practice without necessarily paying. If you're talking about health and safety, you can do that without necessarily paying national minimum wage. But in terms of free labour, obviously the concept of free labour isn't a fair concept. What we're talking about within internships isn't getting someone in and chucking them into a job. It's getting someone in and, say, having one of your staff taking time out of their day to show them how to do a task that they would have done themselves, but instead of taking the time to show an intern how to do it. So the intern is doing a task, but isn't necessarily adding to the business when it's a task that wouldn't have been done by someone else.
Okay. And do you monitor your partners?
Yes, we spend a lot of time before we match up the intern and the company, making sure they're a right fit, making sure the company has a good idea of what they need to offer the intern in terms of training and support. We make sure there are very set goals and definitions for the internship so that the intern knows what they're getting into and knows exactly what they'll be getting out of the experience. We draw the line at 3 months because we feel at that point the intern would have been trained up to a sufficient level that if they were being hired openly, they would be hired as a sort of more experienced employee. And ultimately that's the aim here, is not to proliferate internships. Internships are a means to a job.
Okay. Yes, of course. Yeah.
I mean, all employers, when they get on any staff, have to do a certain amount of training. So I'd say that, they have to pay those, they have to pay for that training, and it's for their own benefit. So I don't think it's an excuse to say I don't want to pay someone whilst I'm training them for them to do my work for me later. I just don't think that makes any sense.
But can I ask you, Ross? There is an issue here. It's a complicated matter, isn't it? Because I've talked to MPs across the political spectrum about this issue, and some will say to me, well, look, I don't want to close off internships, even free internships, completely, because I'm a good member of Parliament, I use these in a very enlightened way. And I particularly use my free internships, very short, a couple of weeks at a time, to give access to my constituents who don't come from a particularly privileged background. And so if I were to close that off, if this were to be decided to be completely unacceptable, I would no longer be able to give those opportunities. But what do you say to people who make that kind of argument?
Well, with the introduction of the minimum wage here in the UK, which happened even within fairly recent memory, people who would make that kind of argument predicted a mass exodus of jobs. They predicted mass unemployment. And this is something that conservative economists predict every time the minimum wage is upped in any country, in any state. And it has never come to pass. And in fact, a whole series of influential economic studies, which I review in the book, have found that there's essentially no change when a minimum wage is introduced or when it's bumped up. And the reasons why that's the case are kind of complex economic reasons. It may be that there's, it's an overall boost for the economy, that you have more people making more money and then going out and spending it, and it has a lot of sort of positive feedback. But I simply don't buy the argument that enforcing the law, just the law as it exists, would lead to some massive loss of opportunities. I think a very sort of thin, particularly exploitative layer at the bottom might disappear as some employers got scared off. But I can also bring as an example, about a year ago in the US, there was fear of a kind of crackdown on unpaid internships as well, coming from the Department of Labor in Washington, D.C. And I know from having spoken to many employers after that they rapidly converted their unpaid internship programs to paid, because it was still a good investment for them, because it was still worth their while. It was still something they were expected to do. Any company that wants to be around for a while is going to have to bring some young people in at some point as their people retire. So I don't think it would lead to such adverse consequences as that. And just to briefly address the question of where I would draw the line also. With a training program, with a dedicated training program, I think it's permissible to have it be unpaid for a certain short period of time. But believe it or not, in the States, and again, this is something I mentioned in the book, I don't know if this goes on in the UK, but there are businesses which exploit people for one day at a time. I mean, they actually literally, these are called multi-level marketing companies, and it's a scam where they basically say it's going to be a day-long interview for an internship or a sort of, a preview or something like that, and they basically just squeeze a day out of you, going around usually doing like door-to-door marketing for them, door-to-door sales, awful work. And not much comes out of it, but they do it in such numbers. I mean, they're moving tens of thousands of people through these. It's a scam basically, and they're constantly changing their names, these companies as well. But that they actually manage to get some significant exploitation out of one day. Yeah, so I think of the basic principle that when real work is being done, it should be paid for, and even if it's for an hour. I mean, people make an hourly wage, right? I mean, for that hour you should be paid. When it is a dedicated, clear training program, I think there can be allowances.
Okay, thank you very much.
In terms of the length of time, I guess, for me it's about the content of the work. It's about the structure and the framework that's in place. So if you get that right, then it shouldn't really matter what the length is. So that's not an argument for unpaid, by the way. It's a way of saying that, yes, labour should be paid for, but there is a space and there's nuance in this debate to say that people who don't have any experience whatsoever of the world of work can go and do some work shadowing for a few weeks. Personally, I'd do that. I'd draw the line between two to 4 weeks, as long as the structure is in place, as long as the mentor is there, the training, the education, the logging of what's happening, and the kind of the impact on the person that goes through that work experience can be maximised. In terms of where that leaves the whole kind of the debate around this, I think actually there are some certain inalienable principles that we have to have, and one of those is that if you do a fair bit of work for somebody, you get some fair pay. And again, we're lucky to have a National Minimum Wage Act in this country. Most countries don't. Where I think there is a real case to highlight some real examples of exploitation is exactly what's going on with the NUJ, and without wanting to make this, a kind of a baiting of Andrew, I think inspiring interns, to be quite honest, for anyone who doesn't know, they make money out of kind of placing unpaid interns into companies. I think that is really exploitative, and I think if we can't turn around as a society and say, actually, businesses making money out of people not being paid to work, I think we've probably got something wrong. So, sorry, Andrew.
Okay, no, it's my role to protect Andrew from the.
Can I respond? Or?
You absolutely can.
Okay. Well, I mean, yes, we place people into internships that pay lunch and travel expenses as a minimum. As I said at the start, it's with a view to a job at the end. Our whole outlook is about getting people into work. And if you come at it from an employer's perspective, you have to. There need to be incentives for them to take on graduates. In the current market, there are so many people looking for work. They have such a pool to choose from. It's difficult for them to justify economically taking on someone who hasn't got any experience. It's a gamble.
I'd like to see this group of highly skilled, highly experienced people who want to take on entry-level internships for nothing. I really want to see that, and if there's pay involved, who are the postgraduates with 10, 20 years of experience who are going to push out the interns and the young people coming out of university?
We have people who come to us who have excellent degrees from excellent universities who don't necessarily have the experience and they can't find work.
Okay, can we throw it open to the audience? We can carry on the discussion on the panel. I want to take 3 questions at a time, and be as gentle as you can bear to be.
I think journalism degrees will fall apart soon, because who's going to pay £27,000 in fees plus your living expenses for 3 years to get a job earning £15,000, £20,000? Apprenticeships have to come back. Skill set, the TUC, they have money available. We just need to find some employers. So I think we need to sort of forget. We need to distinguish between what we're talking about here is internships, which is for the graduates. Those at the moment on courses need to do work experience because they don't actually work in journalism. The idea that you can train someone to be a journalist in a university is a farce, in my view. You have to train people to be journalists on the job being journalists. Yeah. That's my particular view. And therefore, if you're going to train them in university, you have to give them some work experience. Okay, we think it should be paid, but what I would like the panel to specifically ask: how do we? The NUJ has taken one action, okay, and we'll take more. How else can we stop unpaid internships?
Okay, another question just here.
Okay, thank you very much. Sharon Elliott from BECTU, the Media and Entertainment Union. And really, my key point, lots of different angles to come at this from, but essentially the point I want to underline is the need for an unambiguous statement that work must be paid. The practice of actually employing people on expenses-only basis is illegal. That was demonstrated with the case we ran in 2009, the Nicola Vetta case. And therefore, it's absolutely something which everybody here who must rally round to make sure that the law is enforced. Graduates, young people coming into work, they absolutely need that floor upon which to build their future. And Ross, I can't commend you enough for your contributions earlier. I mean, what you've demonstrated is the pernicious effect of the culture that we are currently allowing to become embedded. And the point that a colleague from the NUJ made about education is key. Remember, work experience begins in school. Yeah, this whole question of giving your time for free is something which is become the norm. We need to make it very clear, this separation between education and work, and make sure that our young people do recognise the investment we're prepared to make in them, and the employers too must factor in the need clearly to be paying people for the work that they are doing. Otherwise, they clearly are being hugely exploitative.
Okay, any other questions? There's one here.
Hi, my name is Raihan. I'm representing iPro Bono. It's an organization that connects students and lawyers with charities and other NGOs. And I was wondering about, I'm also a serial intern, so I just wanted to put that out there. And I just wanted to ask, where do we draw the line in terms of for-profit companies and not-for-profit companies? Should NGOs be able to hire interns, and at what duration should they be able to, and at what expenses?
Okay, lots to think about there. That's the first round of questions. Would you like to?
There's a lot said there. In the back, we were asked what can we do to prevent unpaid internships, and I think I've taken the approach that making it as easy as humanly possible for an employer to do the right thing has got to be the start. Education, again, has got to be the second part, because having gone on this journey creating my platform, I spoke to lots of students and lots of employers, and lots of employers actually want to do the right thing. There are, of course, the kind of red devils who are there with legions of unpaid people sweating in boxes in the basement, but that isn't the norm. Usually when you speak to an employer and you say, well, look, have you heard of this national minimum wage malarkey, and are you sure you really want to be dicing with it? And then they say, oh gosh, God, how terrible. I mean, we've heard from Internocracy that 12%, only 12% of line managers even have a little bit of a light bulb that they might be doing something wrong. So certainly part of what I'm doing in simply creating this platform and making it paid internships only, and I say to every single one of my employers, if they ask, and many of them don't even bother because they already do, I say, well, it's a protection for you, but it's also getting you what's actually best for your company as well. So I think that's part of it. And I'm also telling the interns, because a lot of interns have absolutely no idea what they're supposed to do. All they know is that they're paying extra for their student wages, and actually the pressure on them to get a job is more than anything else. And if they can't find one, or if there isn't an easy way, even visibility of paid internships has been absolutely appalling, because websites that I was looking at were absolutely flooded with this paid intern, expenses only, or work for me for 3 weeks and then we'll see. I mean, my platform in and of itself, just aggregating external opportunities which are all paid, as well as being able to allow people to find people directly, saving students' time and saving employers' time, I think that that's certainly going to help. But it takes the media telling people, it takes everyone educating people, and it takes employers just having a little bit of a think about actually what you get an intern in for, and surely that's to get the brightest talent early and to foster that, and who wouldn't pay for that, especially at such we're talking about £240 a week versus expenses and travel. What's an extra £100? I mean, I just think it's just lunacy, I think.
Fiona, do you think we can get back to the old sort of, is it realistic to get back to the old system of apprenticeships? I mean, I teach at the master's course at City University in journalism. You're absolutely right. People are paying a complete fortune for these courses, and in the 3 years I've been teaching there has been a change, in fact, in the students who've come through that course. In fact, the talent has diminished because increasingly it is only people who are immensely wealthy who can afford to do those kinds of courses. And if you only take from a talent pool that is immensely wealthy, some of them will be very talented. Jemima Khan, for instance, I'm sure is hugely talented, but that isn't the point. You need to throw the net as wide as you can. But are we realistically going to be able to move back to an old style system where you have to do your time in a local paper and you have to do effectively an apprenticeship?
Well, to do that, the local papers have to have a budget.
To exist.
The media has to have a budget. I would say that using a lot of unpaid labour is actually going to bring down wages across the board. I think a lot of interns don't realise that. They think, this is my break, this is my break. They're thinking purely from their own point of view, which is understandable, but they forget that once they do get a job, there's going to be a whole wave of fresh meat coming up behind them, bringing wages down. You've got all sorts of other problems going on. You've got free newspapers, which are devaluing copy in the eyes of the general public. As long as you've got massive oversubscription, I don't know. If people want to do these courses, the universities will keep offering them. So who's going to be driving the apprenticeship system? I don't know. The newspapers aren't in a position to do it. They might like to.
Yeah. Ross, just to address the issue of small companies and not-for-profits, and where, again, it's important, I think, for us to start to define some of these lines as the internship debate reaches a kind of higher profile. So what's your feeling on this?
My feeling on the sort of for-profit, non-profit divide is that non-profits are still employers, and they still have certain responsibilities to their employees, and you can't have a sort of double standard where employment law doesn't apply to a whole set of employers just because of how they're registered as a charity, which is almost kind of a tax matter in certain ways, or it has to do with some things other than employment practices. What I would say is that those employers, nonprofits, should be clear about what they're looking for. If indeed their ultimate defense is that they're just getting volunteers, they're bringing on volunteers, then they should advertise for volunteers. Using the word intern sends out a targeted signal to people that this is some kind of employment opportunity. It doesn't call on the sort of well springs of volunteerism. It's really sort of calling on careerism. I mean, it's calling on this desire, I want to get ahead, I want to move forward. And so it's a different sort of thing, and it could muddy the waters of volunteerism, of being a volunteer as well. So I think, I don't think we would want to constrain the ability of nonprofits to bring on volunteers and to extend their capacities that way. But we have to recognize that they're employers like anybody else, and that when they are bringing on people, certainly full-time, even, on a regular basis for extended periods of time, when it's clear that volunteerism is not really the issue, but instead kind of mission-critical work for the organization, that they're an employer like anybody else. So I think, nonprofits need to choose. Are we looking for a volunteer here, or are we looking for a worker? And, using intern as a kind of type of misdirection should be discouraged.
Dom, you're the kind of carrot man here. You're the nice guy who's trying to help these companies on their way towards good practice. Again, in talking about the nuances of this debate, we at New Deal in the Mind have talked about perhaps bringing in some sort of system for good practice, rewarding good practice for our partners. And what we've been warned against is saying to people, too tough, being too tough on people and saying, you're a bad employer, and pointing the finger when people are trying to move towards being good employees. How do you deal with that transition?
I think it's building on a bit of what Dupsy said, which is that there's a real business case, actually, for really, really good internships. It's up to organisations like myself and Dupsy to actually go out there and talk to businesses and be realistic and say, here's the business case, it stacks up. You should tell all your employers that they should be accredited by our scheme. We try and make it as light touch as possible. We have it very much youth-led, so the interns do pretty much the bulk of the evaluation. We come in and make sure there's a structure there. We have a board of professionals led by professors of employment who check the rigour of these evaluations. But fundamentally, we make it easy for the employers, because the last thing that they need is, not only if they're paying their interns and they're structuring it well, they don't need this whole complicated process of having it all evaluated on top of it. And I think, actually, I'd go further than Ross around the kind of the non-profits. We're a non-profit, but the reason we're a non-profit is that we're built on a set of values. And actually, if you're a value-driven organisation, what are you doing employing people and not paying them? I could completely understand this idea around volunteerism. I'm a trustee of a charity that does a lot around volunteers. But actually there is something to say that as an organisation that first and foremost tries to change the world, tries to do something positive with its time, what are the practices that you're undertaking at the same time? I'd go further and say it's not about volunteer worker, it's not about the definitions. It's about the kind of organisation you want to be. It's about the kind of culture that you want to create and the kind of social change, basically, you'd like to create in the world. And I think how you do that is as important as what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is an argument for saying that that organisations and companies that run on free labour are just not sustainable businesses.
Absolutely.
And there is a work of education to be done here. I mean, think tanks, for instance, run largely on intern labour. And in fact, I was talking to someone who was setting up a new think tank recently, who was saying, well, what am I supposed to do, Martin? My whole business model is based on intern labour. Well, in that case, that's not a sustainable business then, is it?
They want free business advice as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But Andrew, I just wanted to ask you, what's your advice to your partner organisations, your employers, about the legality of the situation, which sounds to me like, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of your partner organisations are working in a kind of illegal space. So how do you get around that?
We feel that the interns generally wouldn't be covered by national minimum wage. It's not an internship where they're going in and doing tasks from the word go. If it is, we ask the employers to pay national minimum wage. It's the training aspect which we highlight. And you're not bringing on someone on board who will add value to your organisation straight away. You're bringing someone on board who you can train up, and then at the end of a 3-month period, or less in quite a few cases, they can then be hired permanently because they can then add value to your organisation.
Okay.
In terms of...
Sorry,
carry on.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of applying national minimum wage across the board on every single opportunity, I think you'd have to look closely at what the implications of that are, because I think there's a moral imperative on organisations who hire people on expenses only to offer a level of training, to offer potential for a job perhaps, and to offer a real level of support. Whereas if you're hiring someone on national minimum wage from the word go, it could just be to do the menial tasks within your organisation, and it's not necessarily a positive experience. It could be less positive if you feel you're given a mandate by paying national minimum wage to get someone in to do making the tea or the photocopying or running errands. And sorry, just one more point.
Do carry on.
Picking up on what you're saying about masters and postgraduate courses, again, that's for most people, for a lot of people now, a step towards employability. You're paying to do a course, a year-long course or 6-month course, which will add to your employability. And perhaps sometimes it is better to do an internship where you're learning skills on the ground, as it were, rather than forking out a hell of a lot of money to do a master's course and get even further into debt.
Okay. How long have we got, Millicent? Okay, fine. Let's take another... Gosh, there's lots of questions now. Well, we'll take at least one more round of questions then. Yeah. And then another question here.
Thank you. Andrew, I know Martin will have to protect you because I'm starting on you, but I don't really buy what you've said at all. If we take one thing that you've said, and you said that's the pool of labour. In other words, there are so many graduates out there looking for jobs. From the employer's point of view, they can take them on for free. The reason why I don't buy that is as follows. I come from a different industry to the media industry. I come from the finance industry, and I'll give an example. I used to work in a bank, an investment bank, and the jobs were in high demand. We wanted to recruit one graduate. We had 400 applications. We took on one graduate. We still paid them, and we paid them very, very well. And in fact, including in the applications, there were people who were saying that volunteering to say, well, we'll do the job for nothing. We still paid the person we recruited, and we didn't take on actually one of the people who offered to do it for nothing. So that's one thing. If we look at some of your other arguments, you say that they're not necessarily at the time that they start work, they're not contributing. In other words, they are a cost on the company as opposed to a profit centre of the company. Because from day one, when they're asked to do a role, they can't do it. They need supervision, and that supervision means it's actually taking longer to do for the person supervising than the supervisor could have done it themselves. Now that's standard in all industries, and it's always been standard in industry. I mean, I qualified as a chartered accountant. When I came out of university, and I was paid to train and qualify as a chartered accountant. In my first year, day one, I had to be shown how to use a photocopying machine. Right, so someone had to stand by me and show me how to unjam things, do photocopying, all of the other sorts of rubbish, basic accounting sort of stuff. I had to be shown, I had to be trained, I had to be done all of this by somebody else who was supervising me who could have done it quicker. 3 years later, by the time I qualified, I had to do the same for other people. I had to train them up when I could have done it quicker myself. Yet they were paid and everyone was paid. So all of your arguments, quite frankly, that you're making for unpaid just don't seem to stack up, because historically it's always been the case. 15 years ago, when Martin and I were young, we didn't have internships.
Okay, I'm going to take a question here. I'm going to try and take, actually, if we can be very quick with our questions or statements, I'll take them all, because there's such a lot of interest. And then
isn't the strongest argument that there are millions of companies or thousands of companies that are just flouting employment law, and one never really reads about that? Because they admit that they're getting rid of real jobs, they're taking interns. I know that happens in the fashion industry.
You're not reading about it because a lot of them are newspapers.
Hi, my name is Mark Watts. I'm the editor of a startup investigation news website which is launching later this year, and we're bucking the trend in two ways. One, in the age of free digital media content, we're actually going to charge for content. People have to subscribe. And we're also going to employ people at all levels, take people on at all levels, including people starting out in journalism, and we're going to pay them. Because the principle is that we expect them to do a proper day's work, and I think they should have proper days pay for that. We expect something from them, they should have something back. I really have a question for the marketing guy from Inspiring Interns. I have to say I'm quite intrigued by the marketing strategy that inspired the name of your company, and I wonder why you decided on a marketing strategy that seemed to be aimed at taking the piss out of your clients and your prospective clients. But my question is this: you said that it's not an issue of whether to pay or not to pay interns. But you see, every year, my accountant tells me that I have to send a whopping great cheque to HMRC. I have to pay tax. I really don't like that. It's really inconvenient. I'd rather not do it. But unfortunately, it's the law. And actually, it's probably a good idea, generally, that we all do that. Otherwise, goodness knows what state the country would be in. So given that, I wonder how worried you are about the prospect of having a challenge of the nature that BEC2 launched, of the nature that the NUJ launched against employers who were simply in breach of the National Minimum Wage Act. If someone is a worker for a day or however long, they have to be paid at least the national minimum wage. And it seems to me you're taking the piss out of your other clients, namely the companies with whom you place your interns, because you're leading them down the path to being exposed to the kind of actions that have been launched by a couple of media unions so far.
Okay, thanks. I obviously will let you come back on that. Okay, one here.
I was just going to say, isn't the graduate talent pool doing the same sort of thing?
And maybe one just in front, quickly.
Hi, Becky from Internocracy. I just wanted to ask...
From Internocracy, yeah?
Yes, I'm Dom's colleague. I just wanted to ask, are we just talking really about London-based internships? Shouldn't we be thinking more about regionality and how we spread the opportunities out to people, say, in the Northwest and various areas to meet that they don't have to spend money coming down and living in London? Yeah, that's what
Actually, as we were late starting, can we take some of those questions, then do one more round? Yeah? Okay. So can we... well, Andrew, would you like to...
Okay. Well, lots of points, obviously, to cover there. The first question...
you don't have to take all the points. I mean, you can just respond to Mark if you like.
Well, just quickly on the first question. Getting people jobs is the ultimate aim here. That's why people do internships, because they want to get work. And I think there's a real danger that if you end internships and end the culture of internships, then those jobs won't exist. If you're talking about interns coming on and being trained up. Because if you're, there's a distinguishment to be made between internships, which are replacing entry-level jobs, which are obviously wrong, and internships where graduates may be going into a company and proving their worth in the company who previously hadn't thought about taking on an intern or taking on a graduate, has had their mind changed by the graduate's ability and being able to prove themselves. In terms of taking the piss out of our clients, obviously I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, if the issue's with the name, I wasn't actually at the company when it was formed, so I can't offer any comment on what the decision-making process was behind that. But we feel we offer a service for candidates which helps them get a job in a very difficult market. We offer them a lot of guidance because a lot of graduates come out and really don't know what they want to do, and we spend a long time with them sitting down and making sure when we do the matching process that they're going to get an internship which is right for them, which is why we have a relatively high level of success with people staying on where they were interning. And in terms of companies, we spend a long time with them as well, making sure they understand the ins and the outs of internships and that they know they're taking on someone for training. And not straight into a job.
What about the law? I would say that it is a risk for employers, obviously for the reasons that the NUJ have and the court cases that have been brought. It's potentially a tax fraud, as you said, and also these employers are paying. They're paying your company. I'm sorry to say, large amounts of money, and not the intern, because they are paying the equivalent of I think it's £2,000 for the experience, but they're paying it directly to you rather than the intern. I don't know whether, I'm sure you add value in terms of training and all the rest of it, but we match on my website, in moments, and Internocracy creates, a lot of guidance for employers who want to know how to do it the right way. So, I mean, there are other ways, and I'm sure if the business has a demand, that potentially there is a demand for that. But I think it's important that the media and everybody else say that there are other ways. There are ways which mean that people can get paid, and you won't be at risk of a lawsuit at the end of it. And that's where I stand on that issue.
So I was wondering about the issue of publicity and how to get this message out.
I wanted to make three kind of general points responding to different things people have said that may also touch on that. And obviously, part of what I'm trying to do with this book and we're trying to do with a panel like this is to get the word out. And I think it is increasing, but ultimately it takes interns and young people not being willing victims, as many are. It means that far too much of the internship boom is driven by young people volunteering, as it were, to work for free, just sort of going up and saying, and it's something you're told to do. It's something people have internalized, and they're hearing from all directions. But still, a big part of the point, a big part of the message is addressed to those people to say, don't do this. There are larger impacts. A couple of other points responding generally to some things that have come up. In my research for the book, I found that paid internships are generally better on a whole set of measures. People are more likely to be hired into full-time jobs out of paid internships. They're more likely to get better training out of paid internships because the employer values that person. When it's an unpaid intern, they're more likely to be making coffee. They're more likely to be sort of forgotten and devalued. The other point I want to make is about the connection between the internship boom and youth unemployment. The internship boom is in full flower. And yet youth unemployment is at the highest levels ever. So clearly having more internships does not lead to more jobs for young people. Youth unemployment is near 20%, 17 point something percent here in the UK, and in general, in the Western world, the same, close to 20%. And yet there are more and more internships. It's not that internships are creating jobs, they're taking away jobs. A trend which is happening in the United States is career change internships. People in their 30s, 40s, 50s doing internships. I don't know if this has really happened here yet, but and I'm not wishing it upon anybody, but people who are out of work and they feel they need to sort of get back into the workforce. They need to do something. They don't want to just sort of sit at home. I mean, I understand the impulse very much so, and they're willing to do anything. They may have more savings because they have been working, and they are applying for internships. They're saying, please let me do this. Companies are bringing them in. And it gets to this issue of whether or not to pay for training or whether training should ever be paid for. people switch employers all the time. They switch employers, they switch industries. At every point of transition, especially in such a sort of flexible job market as we have, where there's lots of changes like that, at every point, should there be an unpaid period of time? Should that be sort of mandatory every time you want to switch a job until you're a full contributor? You're not gonna be paid. I mean, that would have massive effects to have that kind of idea out there. So if we generalized this principle, I think it could be very dangerous.
Dom, do you want to come in, or shall I?
Sorry, can I just jump in on one point Ross made quickly? There's certainly a rise in internships, as you say. I don't think there needs to be you need to distinguish between internships where they're not adding value to the person's experience and they're not potentially leading into jobs, and much more structured internships which are doing that. And I think if there was a different term for the two, rather than using internship as an umbrella to cover all multitude of sins, then I think we would see internships helping people get jobs.
Okay. I think if it's a training program, they should call it a training program. Absolutely.
A question here then.
Mick Greenough, could I publicly acknowledge the work and effort put in by Fiona to get the breakthrough she's achieved, for which paradoxically she was not paid?
Okay.
Hi, and my name is Valerie, and in terms of publicly acknowledging things, I'd like to publicly acknowledge Profile Books, because I oversee the internship for that publishing house. As you know, publishing, the industry itself really relies on unpaid labour. Our internship has always been a paid internship. It runs for 2 months, and within the internship, the interns essentially train each other. They get thrown in at the deep end. They're given all sorts of work to do, high-level work, as well as making the tea. That's very important too. And I just think you do have to have the mindset. Luckily, I work for somebody, Andrew Franklin, who has the mindset that it's very, very important to respect people's time and their labour. And so he's always set it up that way, that from the very beginning, interns are paid.
Thanks very much.
But the difficulty that I'm having actually running the internship is finding different kinds of candidates. I sort of see one CV, essentially, and I get hundreds. So that would be, and I think I'm wondering actually if that has something to do with the fact that it is paid and it is a graduate internship, and therefore it's not reaching,
You should recruit from job centres.
Hi, my name's Matthew, ex-intern, now a graduate employee finally. I'm going to use the word lazy, the phrase lazy journalism in the Frontline Club, because I think it's appropriate to say that we all read in the newspapers about graduate employers that are saying graduates don't match our aspirations for them. Their numeracy isn't good enough, their literacy isn't good enough. But I often think that the graduate employers are letting down the graduates in the sense that they're not creating jobs that are fit for them. They're not giving them adequate amounts of responsibility. And I think this is leading to a situation where we have internships that lead to a dead end. They don't think of creating a graduate position within their organisation. Let me just give you a quick example. I went to a careers fair at a very good university that I went to last year, and a person came to speak to us about careers and social policy, and it was an area that I was previously interested in going into. This person was 28 and had not held a permanent job and was treading from think tank to think tank to think tank without any prospect of getting an entry level position. And I think that's the problem. There aren't enough entry level positions for graduates in this country. How you go about getting them is a different thing altogether, but I think that internships that are just a means to an end, the end of the internship, and nothing more, I think that's really the problem.
Okay, there's a question at the back here.
Thank you. I came here as very much of a hardliner along Martin's lines, that you shouldn't have to work for nothing. And I think it's restricted the intake into journalism horrifically over the last 10, 15 years. But there was one thing that I think Ross said that gave pause for thought, which was he said, we have our music collections for free. You're also getting your newspapers largely for free. Now, part of me says, well, you get my byline and my colleagues' bylines for free. Maybe you're paying for it in terms of working for free in another way.
Yes. Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Well, no, you've already asked a question. Okay, 2 more questions, and then I think if the panel could wrap up, that would be great. in answering all the questions.
I'm currently an undergraduate, and I imagine at some point I will be entering into the world of internships, paid and unpaid. What advice could you give me?
Sign up to Intern Avenue.
Hello there, my name is Erica Gornall. I'm a freelance journalist, do stuff with BBC and talk about Thames at the moment. I've been following internships for a while actually, and this is a question with hopefully no bias behind it. Mainly looking at the distinction you might draw between a work experience and an internship. For example, what would you say if you had someone who works for nothing, but for 1 or 2 days a week? And this is more of a kind of access-based question, so it wouldn't really be there at all if it was full-time. And that person who's there working for free perhaps gets the experience, but can also get money from outside that internships. They kind of be able to do both rather than a full-time internship, but where obviously you can't do anything outside, and it only means rich people can get it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, let's take the panel from the other end this way this time so answering all those questions and wrapping
all of those questions and more.
Yeah.
Should we try and solve the whole issue of unpaid?
That would be good. Well, I think that's what we're being asked to do here, so, certainly in a personal sense.
Interesting, Erica, that you mentioned the BBC. A couple of days ago, it came out on the back of a Freedom of Information request that over the last 4 years, the BBC's employed around 6,000 unpaid interns, which is pretty hefty, to say the least. I think, trying to pick up on a number of different threads, I think, to be fair to Andrew, I think we just have different ideas of what opportunity means. For me, I think I have a different frame. I think it has to be built upon economic independence. It has to be built upon fair training, fair wages for the time you put in. I completely accept that you have a different frame for that. I think another couple of points, and one point that Francis O'Grady made from the TUC, which is quite interesting, was that there's actually, forget about a glass ceiling in this country for the moment, there's actually a glass skirting board. Internships just don't allow access to certain professions if you come from a background that's not moneyed or based close to where these opportunities are. And I think partly that's a reflection on the fact of a wider trend, which is that as a proportion of GDP, the wages that we all earn in the labour market has actually fallen from the 1970s of around 65% to about half of that these days. And actually I think that's a really worrying wider trend that we can find, that internships has become a part of that and exacerbates the problems further down the line. So I guess in trying to look for solutions, in trying to help you to get your first internship, God help you, I think we have to, as the carrot guy, I think we have to be quite proactive. We have to be out there as we are day after day, making the case to employers that this is the right thing to do, not just morally. There's not just a moral imperative, there's not just a legal imperative, but there's actually a business imperative as well. And I think if you're starting out, I'd look for employers that carry the Internocracy accreditation mark, first of all. Secondly, I'd be quite creative in how you go about applying for opportunities. As the lady from the back said, there's so many kind of pro forma replica CVs that are there at the moment that actually a lot of the people and interns that we work with in our interns network of a few thousand, actually what really can make them stand out is being a bit more creative about how they go about applying, how they go about finding out about opportunities. So just be a bit proactive in every sense, and good luck.
Maybe you could see afterwards for a free kind of session.
I'll be doing a seminar after this.
Well, I would say that you don't have to do an internship to get ahead. There are other things you can do. There are other ways you can build skills and have experiences, and because you're doing regular work that's not relevant, you're working in a bar or something like that, doesn't mean there's not something in that also. Doesn't mean there aren't life skills and job skills that you're getting through that also. There's a tendency, I think, to sort of disparage regular paying work at the expense of internships, which seem relevant to one's career and seem to hold out all this promise. But I guess I would just sort of try to wrap up a little bit by saying every society needs to figure out how to move people from school to work. It's a central question of public policy. It's something which matters to us all. And internships have kind of filled this vacuum without anybody sort of pushing them in particular. Employers have found advantage from them. Young people have, sort of thinking for themselves, working for themselves, have positioned themselves in internships. But it's kind of grown up in the cracks. And what we need to do is actually just sort of bring the issue out of the shadows, think about this consciously as a larger social and political question, as a rational object of conscious public policy. What is the best way to do this? I know there are efforts like the Future Jobs Fund, which are about doing just that. To sort of mix metaphors in an awful way. Young people, we're shooting ourselves in the foot as we're trying to get a foot in the door. We're in a race to the bottom. And any individual person, it may make sense for you to do an unpaid internship for a brief period of time. Don't become an unpaid serial intern. Don't get caught in the internship trap. Don't even do 3 months. But there's the sort of the pragmatic side for you making choices depending on how much things have changed when you're confronting this. But then there's the larger picture that we should all be thinking about, which is how best to design this system and to reform something which has gone off the rails.
In terms of doing an internship, start now. Don't wait till you've finished university. I think that's partially one of the issues we have here compared to, say, France or Germany, where they have slightly more developed internship systems where people do it much more as part of their degree and do it while they're at university and get that experience before going out into the world of work, rather than finishing university and thinking, I need a bit more experience now. And make sure it's the right experience for you. Ask pertinent questions, ask what you'll be doing, what you'll be finding out while you're there, who will be looking after you, what sort of the end goal is in terms of what you'll be learning, and hopefully you'll be able to find experience which benefits your career. More broadly, as I've said a couple of times already, it's about getting people jobs. Internships, no one does an internship just because they want to be an intern. They do an internship because they want to get a job. We need to look at ways we can get employers in hiring graduates, and at the moment the way we work and how we found it is that internships do help graduates find work. They're not replacing entry-level jobs, they're helping graduates get themselves into companies and get those positions. So that would be my key message this evening. In terms of separating, again, it's something I said earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. It's worth separating internships where, as I said, they're structured, you have a real goal, and there's sort of an end aim at them. At the end of them, generally employment, should be separated from internships where they're long, unpaid, you're replacing another intern, you'll be replaced by an intern in your stead, and the company or the organisation is running on interns. I think there should be a separation there, and ones which are providing real benefits for graduates should not be lumped in with ones which are purely exploitative.
Good cooks and bad cooks.
I would say that there's been a lot of discussion here today, and internships obviously touch everybody. But I don't think, and what I would like to end on is all the positives that an internship brings. I mean, yes, it's a potential foot in the door, and you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. But it's also the ability to meet people, to network, to decide whether you actually want to do a particular profession. It's an opportunity to see, and it's an opportunity to give something to a company and get something back. And I don't think it has to be a fatalistic view. I don't think it has to be awful. I don't think it has to be seen as a grin and bear it sort of proposition. For interns and for students, I think they need to equip themselves with enough knowledge to be able to see where, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. I think they should understand what their rights are and not sell themselves short. Every single graduate and student that I've ever met is a skilled and often incredibly highly motivated person who would be a delight to the right employer. And it's about finding those opportunities, which can be difficult. That's why a platform such as Intern Avenue has been created. You are always online, and employers who need someone no longer have the excuse of saying, I couldn't find someone, so I got them from the golf club, or I couldn't find someone, so I got whoever was there and they weren't that good, so I decided not to pay them. I mean, you can get online and find exactly who you need and share together and see whether you're a good fit, and that is the beauty of this experience. But we've got to be practical, and we've got to understand that this is what companies are about. Companies are the people that are there, and so we want to create a system in this country and worldwide where everybody wins, for one, and two, we've also got to understand that businesses do have their pressures. I mean, I think it's great that people would investigate other, paid forms of work, and there's lots of ways to get experience. But a High Flyers research survey recently said that almost all of the big graduate employers said that if you don't have relevant work experience, your chance of getting a job is slim. So you've got to be thinking about what you want to do and use the internship process to empower yourself. So I say, if you're an employer who's looking for someone and doesn't want to take on, wants to find someone instantly, come to Intern Avenue. If you're a graduate, also come to an Intern Avenue, and we listen to people and we aggregate opportunities. And I hope that through what I'm doing, through what Internocracy is doing, through what everybody's doing here today, we can just take a second and think, hey, it doesn't have to be an awful proposition here. Everybody can win, and that's what I would leave everybody with today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm a freelance, and if someone said they weren't going to pay me for my 1 day a week on the strength that it was only 1 day a week, I would be a lot thinner than I am now. So, yeah, you could do a part-time internship. It could work very, very well, but you should still get paid for it, because presumably you're doing the work part-time. They can pay part-time. In terms of what you should do to get on, if you have to do an internship, do your internship. If that's what you feel you have to do, then come to us, assuming you're working in media. Once you've got your job, that's what a lot of people are doing. The people who are coming to the campaign tend to be very, very angry people quite often. They may well have been lied to. A lot of people are saying they'll pay their interns, and they don't. That's what happened with Kerry Hudson, our success story. However, a lot of the problem is caused by HMRC is just not pursuing the cases, the intern cases. If it was, we wouldn't have this discussion tonight, because there wouldn't be a problem. I don't think there would be a loss of jobs for the reasons we've heard earlier. I think the idea of unpaid internships, and I'm always talking about unpaid internships when I get across it, paid internships can work very, very well. Work experience, if you need to do work experience as part of your course, if it really is part of the course, I think you can't claim for it. But if it's not part of your course, if you just happen to be working for a newspaper over Christmas or whatever, you can still get the national minimum wage for that. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, but you can get it. I have to say, Andrew, this isn't aimed at you, but it is aimed at your company. In terms of taking the mickey, the blog of your company suggested in an article on frugality that interns should eat roadkill. So
it was a very tongue-in-cheek article.
But it wasn't funny. The only people who might find that funny are the people who aren't in that position. It wasn't funny, and it was taking the mickey.
Okay. I'm going to close on that exploding point. I'm going to use the chair's privilege to ask you to think about this. I am a biased chair, I have to say. I hope I've been fair to Andrew, but I am a biased chair. I have a position. I was a judge. I had the privilege to be the judge of the Orwell Prize for Journalism this year, and frankly, it was shocking. It was extremely difficult to find any journalists of any quality under the age of 40. We managed to get one person onto the long list of the Orwell Prize who was under the age of 40. I think we are suffering from the results of trawling in a very, very narrow talent pool. And this is already having consequences. And so finally, think about it in terms of a Premiership football club. If a Premiership football club only recruited its players from British public schools, we'd have a pretty crappy Premiership in this country. And yet, why are we doing that elsewhere? Why are we allowing this across the arts sector, the journalism and the media in general? It's disgraceful, and we're already suffering. So anyway, on that last note, I'd like to thank a fantastic panel.